Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining me tonight. This is Toby Eunice with a Gypsy's Kiss. Stick with me a little while, and we've got some emails to answer, some text questions, some voicemails. We've got a new toy to open, and I've got a story to tell you about my life. So make sure you stick with me. A Gypsy's Kiss production. I know my partner, Shelley Carney, is in the room as the softer side tonight, so she'll be handling moderation. But I spent a good part of the day today with Shelley, and I'll tell you more about that story in just a minute. So we've got some text questions that we need to answer, and I've got an email question that I need to answer as well. And I'll take whatever questions we have in the room. If you guys have a question that you'd like an answer to, not necessarily, but an answer from me to, make sure you text it to our toll-free number, which is going below me right now, 866-597-9901. You can text or you can call and leave a voicemail of up to 2 minutes, and then after a little while, I'll open up the phone lines and you'll be able to call and we can chat. And Heather Dawn, I want you to make sure you call in because we started a conversation, earlier in the week when Shelley and I were on, but we were talking about our new course, and it wasn't a Fenn night, and I remember having to ask you to do it at another time. So tonight would be the time if you want to talk about Forrest Fenn or the Fenn community or whatever. Okay, so let me just check my stream to make sure everything is copacetic, and indeed, YouTube is happy, and I'm happy. I know Shelley is happy. So where do I start? Let's start with a life story. So I don't know how much you know about me, so I'm going to fill in some of these blanks. I was born and raised in New Mexico. I left in my senior year of college in 1969, joined the military, spent 5 years in the military, and when I finished, I was in Washington, D.C. And at that point, that was 1974, and I bought my first house. And from that time forward, I purchased houses. Now, they were progressively larger because eventually I was raising a family. My spouse and I were raising a family, and we eventually ended up living in Chantilly, Virginia, which is where the kids graduated from high school, all six of them except Jason, who came back to St. Michael's High School, which is where I graduated from and my father graduated from. And then they went on to college. And after that, after they had graduated from college, I moved to a house near the Shenandoah River. And it was really kind of much bigger. It was way bigger a house than I needed. It was 5 bedrooms, 5 baths, 10 acres. And I still had to make a living because I was still working and, providing for the kids, although they were doing fine. So when I finally decided to retire in 2010, my plan was to retire to Costa Rica. And I had that dream. I've visited Costa Rica a number of times prior to that. I've visited a couple of times since that. But my plan was to retire to Costa Rica because it was inexpensive and beautiful, and I could do all this sailing, et cetera, et cetera. So my mother, who at the time was 91, had always kind of been angry at me for having left Santa Fe because my sister and 2 brothers stayed in New Mexico. I didn't, and I came back rarely. I want to say once a year, but sometimes it wasn't even once a year. So I'd come back to visit, but I felt like I was an East Coast person, as was my family. Eventually, Jason and Sean moved back, and they moved to Albuquerque and started making their livings here. The other children, of course, as I've mentioned in the past, live on the East Coast. So when I decided to retire, I thought it only fair that since I was planning to retire to Costa Rica, that I was going to come by New Mexico and let my mother know that was my plan. And you should, if you've been with me any time whatsoever, you should know that when I told my mother that I was retiring to Costa Rica, she had a heart attack right in front of me. I rushed her to the hospital. The doctor told me that if she was lucky, she had a couple of weeks to live. I didn't express to the doctor that it was likely my fault that she had had the heart attack, but I felt very, I don't want to say guilty is not the right word. I felt, I felt responsible. And so I thought, I'm just going to stay with her. So I got a hotel room at a motel here in Albuquerque. It's over there on Rio Grande. I forget which one. Shelley can remember it, I'm sure. It's over on Rio Grande and I-40. And I decided I'd stay there until my mother passed and go through all the process, just kind of be there to support her. And the only living sibling was my sister. And so I ended up staying in that hotel for 6 months. My mother didn't die. I know that's a terrible way to say that, but she got out of the hospital and went back to her life in Santa Fe. And I just thought I needed to be around for her rather than to retire to Costa Rica. So after about 6 months, I thought, well, I can't stay in this hotel. So I started looking for an apartment, but I couldn't find an apartment that I liked. So I ended up living in a sub-house, guest house of a woman who owned the larger house. She was single and owned the larger house and was renting out the guest house. And I think I stayed there for at least a year, maybe two. And then it started getting small. And then I thought, I got to get realistic about this. I'm going into year 4. By this time, I'm teaching over at UPublic, the public access station. I'm starting to, that's about the time I met Shelley. When she started attending my classes, I started doing more documentaries. And I was like establishing roots. But I've never felt like I needed a house again. The apartment was fine. This is a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment, nice kitchen, dining room. I've got a garage outside where I can store things, my equipment, etc. So I was always kind of happy here. I don't want to say happy is probably the wrong word to use, but I was satisfied. It was enough for me. Well, recently I was reminded by the folks here that my lease was coming up, and I was about to sign my 6th year's worth of lease. Well, I'm almost embarrassed to tell you how much I pay to live here, because when you multiply that times 12 times 6, it turns out to be a really big number. For some people, I'm sure it isn't, but for me, I'm pretty impressed by it. And I kept thinking to myself, what if I had invested that in a house like I had? I'm one of those guys that bought progressively bigger houses based on my ability to buy a house, live in it for a while, sell it at a profit, and then use that to reinvest in the next house. So I just didn't do that this time because it wasn't my interest. So anyway, after realizing I was about to go into another year's worth of lease, my lease ends in March, I decided to buy a house instead and put that money into a house. And so I went through the process of getting pre-approval. I still qualify for my VA loan, so I got approved. They went literally, we did the entire approval, the process over the phone. I filled in some electronic documents. I submitted. It was literally, the guys that I'm dealing with is Veterans United. And by the way, if you ever need to use your VA loan, please contact Veterans United. They really are. They're approved by the Veterans Administration for this kind of work. You get the best rates, you get the best effort. They not only assign you a loan officer that you can call any time, day or night, but they also assign you a local realtor. And that saves you some money as well. Anyway, so I called them, went through the approval process, started on Wednesday, finished by Thursday, had my pre-approval letter on Thursday. And so today I went out looking for houses. And I asked Shelley to go with me because there's nothing wiser to me than taking a woman along when you're looking at a house, because they see all the things. So the mistake that I made was that I've always had a house that was big enough for a growing family. Like I said, the last one was 5 bedrooms, 5 baths, and 10 acres. And so I started looking at houses that were, 2 stories, 3 to 4 bedrooms, 2 to 3.5 baths, and loss and things like that. And they were within my price range. I had been approved, as you know, the process for a certain amount, and they were certainly in my price range in Albuquerque. Now, I don't think comparable houses on the East Coast would be in my price range, but it's different out here in Albuquerque. There's a different market. So I took Shelley, we met with a realtor, and we saw several different houses today. And what I realized is that, for lack of a better way to describe it, that my eyes were bigger than my stomach. It wasn't that I couldn't afford these houses, but I realized, as a single individual for 6 years now, I've been living in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath space. That's probably, I think it's 1,200 square feet, something like that. And that what I was looking at, honestly, were these houses that you could raise a family in, they're very nice, but there would have been a lot of open space. Shelley and I, one of the things that Shelley and I wanted to do was make sure whatever I got into would have a studio space so that we can work from, because we've got this space here. That's my bedroom door over there. That's my kitchen and pantry door over there. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a studio space where we could continue to work together. And the other thing that I wanted to do is that it takes Shelley 30 to 45 minutes, depending on traffic, to get down here. So I wanted to move closer to where she lived, the area in which she lived. And so I started looking in there. And I also had some requirements, like I like big open spaces rather than big crowded. But the communities were nice, but these houses were just too big. And by the end of the day, by the end of looking through these houses, I realized I had to downsize my vision. And so I came back. I had to run some errands this afternoon. I came back to the house tonight, and I went back to Zillow, which is really convenient, and started looking through there and found some, rather than 2-story houses, 1-story houses with, I need at least 2 bedrooms, one for myself and one for the children who come to visit. And then I need a third one for our studio, or I need some space open enough so that we could have a studio. So I started doing that. I found, I don't know, about 8 of them, I guess, all in the same area, kind of where we want to be, where I want to be. And so we're going to go to open houses tomorrow, and then on Sunday, my realtor is going to take us to some other places. So the exciting news is I'm buying a house, and I'll be moving. I have to be out. My lease expires at the end of March. So I'm hoping to get all the work done, the closing done sometime in February. And that way I can use March as a move. I will hire someone to move the big stuff, but then I'll probably do the packing of plates. And it's my garage is tough because it has all my equipment, all my tools, all my bench stuff, all my my hobby life, my interest life is in the garage. So that's actually going to take some time to move. And I built some shelves in there, so I'm going to take those shelves down and put them into whatever the new facility is. So anyway, the point that I'm trying to make here is that I will be moving soon, and you'll see us in a different space once we get to that space. Now, it's not going to be day after tomorrow. Like I said, we haven't even found that. I haven't even found that. I say we because Shelley is literally, as usual, a partner in all this. And so she's helping me pick the house. And it was really her. I could tell that she had something on her mind today, and it was really her that said, she didn't actually say it in this way, but what she indicated was you're looking at houses that are too big for you. They're going to require a lot of work, and she knows I am. I live a very Spartan lifestyle, not because I have to, but because I choose to. And so all these houses were, it's like I looked at the kitchen, dining room, den thing like, this is where I could entertain people, I entertain now. My entertainment is my kids and my grandkids, so it's not like the olden days. Anyway, I'm buying a house. So sometime between, when I buy the house, what I'll do? I'll live stream a walkthrough when I actually own the place, because the first thing I'm going to have to do is get internet connection over there. So I'll do a walkthrough on one of the Fridays once I'm there, so you guys can see it. Okay, so that's this evening's news. So now you're up to date on Toby. So let me show you a new toy. So this just came in the mail today. Let me see if you can see it. It's called the Viral Light. And with that name, you'd imagine it's a light. It's actually, as usual, a production tool. And this actually this product came out as the result of a Kickstarter project. I don't know if you guys know. For those of you who don't know, I'm sure that many of you do. Kickstarter is one of those sites where people put up their ideas and they have people buy into them, and that's how they fund the development of the idea. And what was cool about Viral is, first of all, it's a European company. I think they're like from Sweden. But what was cool about Viral is they were looking for $30,000. Their Kickstarter goal was $30,000, and they closed at $1.3 million, and they did that in 10 minutes based on their pre-promotion, their pre-Kickstarter promotion. So they wanted 30,000, they got 1.3. The result is Viral. And it sells for around $350. Comes in this beautiful case. Actually, I ended up buying one on eBay, and I think the reason it ended up on eBay, it was new. I think what this young gentleman, because he sounded young when I talked to him, I think what this young gentleman did is he bought several on Kickstarter, and then sold them to pay for his purchase. So because he had three others that he was selling, and if you bought it from Viral, or if you go to Amazon and buy it now, the Viral itself is $349, and then the case is $79, and I got both for $375 on eBay from this young gentleman. So this is what it's all about. You can look it up on YouTube. It's WIRAL, and the whole story is there. But it's a cable system for cameras. So basically what you have is, let me show you the three main pieces. You have this length of cordage. It's 50 meters, right? And you string that between two stable devices, and then you attach your camera. You can see the 1/4-inch mount, and they have all these additional mounts for you down here. So that goes there, and then this goes on your camera. You hang this up on the cable. It goes through here, and it locks. It has a locking thing right there, so if these come off the cable for whatever reason, it doesn't fall on the ground. And it comes off the cable. It has an internal battery that's USB rechargeable. This is the controller, so this operates on a wireless connection between the I don't know what you call this, the wire cam holder, and this controls the speed and direction of it, and it's kind of a cool tool because you can basically get slider shots or follow shots that are up to 50 meters long, and all you need is two places, two trees or whatever to string it between. So, but I had an idea of a way to string it between two light stands that you had stabilized in order to kind of put it any place and get that 50-meter shot that you're either following. Just look up the videos on YouTube and you'll see what people are doing with it already. So that's our new toy. I've been waiting for it for a week now, and I'm happy to get it. And we'll incorporate some of that footage into some of our upcoming videos, and it will also be part of our Udemy class when we do the stabilization tools and techniques, because this is one of the tools and techniques that we'll use. So speaking of Udemy, the course price went up to $24.99 after the Udemy sale. But if you look in the description, if you're still interested in taking the course, and we have several of our viewers, TobyFan 3000 has started the course. Steve Barnes has, I think, not only started the course, he's darn near, he's close to finishing, and he's already got a plan for doing his own live stream on a topic of his choosing. So, and TobyFan 3000 John Werner has, I believe he started it but hasn't finished it yet. So there are several of you that have taken advantage of this. The point that I wanted to make is that if you look in the description box below, there is a code called AGK_coupon. If you use that code, you don't have to pay the $24.99. You'll pay the $9.99. So we thought we'd give you that, our AGK folks, that coupon. So feel free to use it and have fun with it, et cetera, et cetera. So we're having a great time. We've got some good reviews on the course. I think people, we did it in a way that, and when you go to the course, I also put a link to the course there. www.udemy.com/livestream like or live-stream-like-boss. But go there, check it out, and I think you can see the reviews. You don't even have to log in. You don't even have to start a Udemy account. Udemy account is free, but I think you can see some of the reviews that people have left us already. So that we're very proud of that work. We started working on the second course, which is not quite related, but very much in line with what Udemy does this last week. And it's going to go a little bit faster now that we have the workflow, but we already have ideas for courses 3, 4, and 5. So we're having fun with it, and it generates revenue. Anything that generates revenue is good as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so let's start with email. And then we'll go to text messages. And again, if you have a question about the Fenn treasure hunt that you would like an opinion on, text it to 866-597-9901, and we'll get to those. Also, you can leave a voicemail. And then after I'm done with all the texts, we'll open up the phone lines and you can call and say hi. Okay? Before I do that, let me go through the room and say hi to folks. Let's see. Oh, Journeyman, first in the room. Wow, Journeyman at 6:36. So Journeyman was 20 minutes early, 24 minutes early into the room. There's Holly, who used to be Holly P. Hurd, H.P. Hurd. So Holly or Holly. I'm going to keep calling it Holly. I don't know that I've seen the reason why you changed your screen name. I'd be interested to hear the story if there is one. Hi, Heather Dawn. How are you doing tonight? The softer side. Softer side. Is in the room. WFG, I did download a section of the Star Wars theme for you, but I didn't get a chance because we spent most of the afternoon looking at houses. I didn't get a chance to put it on the Boss Jock, but I will have it by next week. How's that? Softer side, I said. Heather Dodd, Journeyman. Paul. Wow. Hi, Paul. Paul is one of our British viewers. Let's see. Bill Cross is in the room. Bill Cross. Hi, Bill. Let me see. William Yo, brother, is in the room. Karen Werner, who is Mrs. Toby Fan 3000. I don't know. Am I doxing there? I always want snow to happen late Sunday night, early Monday morning so you don't have to slow down the world. Yeah. Sakar's in the room. We call that a dusting in Minnesota. We get a lot of Minnesotans in the room, don't we? There's Toby Fan 3000, the Friday night birthday bash. Happy 70th. I'm not there yet. It's actually the 17th, which is next Thursday. And Shelly and I will be in Washington, D.C. with my daughters, celebrating it there. And if I can get out a live stream at any time during that night, I'll make sure that we do so that we can wish you guys my happy birthday, which is crazy when you think about it. But thank you. I'm looking forward to celebrating it with my daughters there, and then I'm coming back the following week, and we're going to celebrate it here in New Mexico as well. Let's see. Jerry Harris from Waco, Texas. My last assignment before I moved to Washington for the military is Fort Hood, Texas. I lived in Lampasas. Was it Lampasas? I lived in no. Florence. I lived in Florence, Texas, and I used to come home, living in Forrest. I'd head south from Fort Hood, and then change clothes and go down. And I was attending the University of Texas at Austin. Have you ever been to the Longhorn Bar in Austin? That was a long time ago. Who knows if it's even still there? Longhorn Bar in Austin at the time. So this was 70, 73, 74, early 74. Longhorn Bar in Boston had this thing, Boston, that if you could peel the label off a bottle of beer and not leave any of the label on the beer, they'd give you another beer. So the bar was always filled with guys sitting at the bar trying to, college kids, of course, sitting at the bar trying to peel the bottle, the label off the bottle so that they could get another beer. That left all the cute little Texas girls with nobody to dance with. So I volunteered my dance services and ignored the beer. But Longhorn Bar, hook 'em horns. In Austin, Texas. I'm sure it's out and Waco. As a matter of fact, Waco is it east of Temple, which is where Fenn grew up, and which is the home of. Let's see, what's the university there? My friend Patrick went there to dental school. Maybe you can remind us, Jerry, of where that was. But that was the Lampasas River, which flowed through Temple and went down south and west through Texas. It was a warm river, and they used to fish for catfish. And I had never fished. I grew up in New Mexico where we fished for trout, and so I'd never done that. But at the time, I would spend my weekends. I was working for the gentleman that was the landlord to my apartment in Florence, and he had a big farm or ranch. And so on weekends, I'd go work on the ranch because that's what I spent my summers in New Mexico doing, my grandmother's ranch. And so I'd earn extra money for the family by working on the ranch in the weekends. And he taught me how to fish for catfish. And basically the way that you do it is you take, I think it was cornflakes. You take cornflakes and you mush them up and you mix them with chicken blood. And then you wrap the hook around that, and then you toss that after the catfish, and because they're bottom feeders. I never developed a taste particularly for them. They certainly don't taste like trout. They have a little bit more fishy flavor to it because they are bottom feeders. But Lampasas, Texas, Waco, that whole area was where I spent my time at Fort Hood. As a matter of fact, my oldest daughter was born at the hospital at Fort Hood. Spirit Hunter, you're welcome. Thank you for your support. Let's see, did I miss anybody? Heather Dawn, Spirit Hunter, Toby Finn. Glenna Friedman's in the room. Hello, searchers, she says. Kyle Sandifus. It is Kyle. It's a Toby and Shelley, a Gypsy's Kiss channel. We occasionally talk about Fenn. How's that? But because it's our channel, we can do what we want. That's the advantage of having a YouTube channel, right? It's your YouTube channel. Let's see. William, Toby found the chest and is buying a house. No, I'm buying a house the way that everybody else does with a VA. Well, not a VA loan. Kyle, you know what? I already don't. Let's see. I'm going to toss Kyle out. Got a bad attitude, brother. K-Pro Thor. K-Pro, you're going to have to give me some ideas for your new sound. I mean, that was your intro sound was based on the Raven's Nest. Oh, you know what I could do? How about this? How about if I get the music from, I forgot what the first Indiana Temple of Doom is. No. What was the first Indiana Jones movie? So I'll get the theme from that because that's where the Raven's Nest comes from, right? Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. No, that's the third one. Somebody tell me what the first Indiana Jones. Maybe it was just Indiana Jones, right? I said hi to Journeyman. Let's see. AJ Rainville says hi to K-Pro and everybody else in the room. Let's see. Oh, got a lot of Holly, Jerry Stone. Let's see. 6 inches of snow. Journeyman. Fossil Man 123. Heather Don. Davio 22. Brother Davio's in the room. By the way, Davio, I saw you. I just got around to seeing some of those, some of the Calazar's K-Pro shows, and I thought you've certainly upgraded your audio and video capabilities. I thought your look and sounded great. So let's see. Let me see who else. Toby is going to Vegas. I don't know. I'd like to. I'm thinking about it. We're still trying to figure out between the TSA and the air traffic controllers whether or not we're going to be able to fly next week. So they did get some snow in the DC area. We'll stay on the. We're landing at IAD, and my kids all live on the Virginia side, so we won't get much further than that. I do want to get down to. I love for those of you that know the area. My favorite. Well, I don't want to say my favorite. I have a lot of favorite museums down there, but one of my favorite museums is the Newseum that's downtown. So I'm going to take Shelley to Raiders of the Lost Ark. Is that right? The first one. So who did I promise that to? Oh, K-Pro. K-Pro, I'm going to get you the theme from Raiders of the Lost Ark. You know what's a pretty good theme? As a matter of fact, when there's a kind of aggressive high-end theme when they're talking about, when they're raiding her, or I don't know if you call it a restaurant, her bar, the Raven's Nest. Okay, K-Pro has an idea. Send it to me, and we'll call in a little while when I turn the phone on. Okay, Toby, you are looking well. Thank you. I'm feeling well. Car crash sound effects comes to mind, William. It does, actually. Toby must come to Vegas. Well, up to 35. What's the buy-in? I forgot what's the buy-in there? Because I'm having I do my practicing on the WSOP website. I'm having some pretty good, very good vibrations from there. I have AJ Rainville. We actually, when I lived out there, before I moved out to the Shenandoah, we lived in Chantilly, which was effectively 2 minutes away from Dulles Airport. So yeah, I have been to that part of the Air and Space Museum. So there's 3 locations. There's the Air and Space Museum downtown. There's the Air and Space Museum, of course, now at Dulles. That's where they actually established that because they had one of the, that's where I have pictures of the day one of the shuttles landed at Dulles on the back of one of those 747s, because that was the home that they made there at Dulles Airport for that space shuttle. And then they have another one that's not very well known. God, I wish I could remember. It's just over. It's down around 5 o'clock on the Beltway. For those of you guys that know the Beltway, goes all around Washington. So people, if they want to tell you, they say I'm at about 5 o'clock inside the Beltway. And there's a place down there that is basically a storage facility, but they open it certain days of the week, and they have even more aircraft. That's where all the restoration work is done at that place. I can't. Somebody who's from that area, type the name in. Let folks know the name, because to me it's the most interesting of all the Air and Space Museum properties. So, but we're going to go to a museum. We have the girls. We're not going to be there that long. So we celebrate Thursday. Thursday I'm going to be with Erica and baby Everly. You can see baby Everly up there. That's the one I went out to Boca Raton to visit. That's the baby I went to visit, the grandbaby that I went to visit in November. But she's going to be there, Erica. So we're going to spend Thursday with Erica. Thursday night is the, quote, birthday party. And then Friday we're doing... That's Shelley and I are going to the museum, and then Saturday we're doing a winery thing the girls have planned. That's one of their things, is to do winery things. Okay. All right. Let's go to, okay, that's all I got from my personal life. How long? Oh, man, we used up 36 minutes with that. So let's start with, let me put this new toy away. So this is an email message from Gary Hawkins. And Gary says, oh, dear Mr. Eunice and Miss Carney, we're Toby and Shelley, Gary. So please feel free. I've been watching your YouTube videos about the Fenn treasure and its hunt. I'm just wondering if I would be allowed to ask some questions, of course. I am not living in the continental United States, as I, in fact, live on the other side of the planet in Australia. Wow. We have a viewer from Australia. Speaking of Australia, no, this is not speaking of Australia. The Albuquerque Journal this last week had an article. So, okay, but let me put this away for just a second. I got to do this too. So I don't know if you remember last week, I told you at 9 o'clock that ABC, whatever it was, I still don't know if it's Nightline, Dateline, or 2020, one of those shows, but it's 9 o'clock Mountain Time, was doing a two-part series on John Wayne Bobbitt and Lorena Bobbitt. And so the first part of that two-part series was last week. And in that series, in that first episode, if you will, John mentioned the Forrest Fenn treasure. And that's where he gets his information, and he told stories about it. Now, a lot of that ended up on the, don't make fun, cutting room floor. Because John told me after that was shot, he said I got in a mention of a gypsy's kiss in that interview, but that did end up. Anyway, the Albuquerque Journal picked up on the fact that John Wayne Bobbitt was there, and he mentioned the Fenn treasure. And then the guy that was doing the article, I can't remember his first name is Mark, I think, picked up and found the interview that we did with John Wayne Bobbitt and made a joke about my comment. I don't know if you guys have seen that interview. If you haven't seen the interview, it's kind of fun. But at some point, John is complaining to me about how these programs that do the interviews kind of mistreat him, that he's not treated fairly, that they focus on Lorena. And I said, I made a deal with him, kind of jokingly at the time. And I said to him, I'll tell you what, I will go to Las Vegas and do an interview, a documentary style interview with you, and I'll take care of the production, and nothing, I said, will end up on the cutting room floor. And I didn't get a sense of what I was, it didn't strike me what I was saying. I was just using production technology. Cutting room floor is an old term for editing out, because that's when you cut the film, it would end up on the cutting room floor. And Shelley was sitting on the couch because it was a work day for us. And he turns to Shelley, although you don't see it, because in the Albuquerque Journal, they say he turns to somebody off camera and he says he made a joke and he laughs about it, cutting room floor, blah, blah, blah. And I go, oh, I'm sorry. And then we went on with the interview. But the Albuquerque Journal picked up on that, and I think it was day before yesterday, they had an article in the Albuquerque Journal regarding John Wayne, and they included that little vignette from our interview of him. So it was kind of neat. We got to see our name in the in the news. So, all right, okay, I think that's it. I think that's all the stories I've got. So for that poor soul that couldn't figure out if this was a Fenn-related channel or not, I'm sorry I had to throw you out, because now you don't get to see you get to see it, you just can't talk about it. So that's what you get for being a wise guy. Okay, dear Mr. Eunice and Ms. Carney, I have been watching your YouTube videos about the Fenn treasure and its hunt. I'm just wondering if I would be allowed to ask some questions. Of course, that's why we do this. I'm not living in the continental United States, so the distinction is interesting, because the non-continental United States include Alaska and Hawaii. As I, in fact, live on the other side of the planet in Australia. The treasure and its hunt is fascinating, and I am intrigued by it. I have some ideas, don't we all? That's how we end up here, right? Simple question, what made you change your mind in relation to, quote, there is no Fenn treasure in New Mexico west of the east bank of the Rio Grande River, unquote, and now your search leads you to that area? Well, first of all, we are no longer searching. We are not searching for the treasure, so there is that qualifier. But in response to your question, the answer to your question is not what made me change my mind. It was who made me change my mind. And the answer to that, the who made me change my mind, was Ranger Steve at Cimarron Canyon State Park. and he informed me that that warm waters. I had made the assumption that warm waters halted at special trout waters, and there were none of those west of the east bank of the Mississippi Rio Grande River. He informed me that I was incorrect, that warm waters halt at trout waters, and that special trout waters are a subset of trout waters. And so it was Ranger Steve that corrected me. That opened up some areas, and more specifically, the area in which we are now searching, in which we were searching up until October of this year. So I hope that explains who it was rather than what it was. I guess what it was his explanation of the New Mexico state fishing regulations, and not actually the explanation. It was more of a clarification of the New Mexico state fishing regulations. So that was written. Let's see. I hope that I'm not wrong, but I thought you saw the video a while ago, and it was said that the treasure is not west of the East Bank, but you recently said that your search has moved to the area, and which is in fact west of the. Okay, I was shocked by it at the time, as I thought it was there in that region. I might have missed the YouTube video in which you explained this. Yeah, there's a video in which Shelley and I actually had come back from that Cimarron Canyon State Park, and I was kind of mad at the fact that I had wasted 5 years of my search life on a bad assumption. And so I was in a pretty bad mood. And I think it was a Friday. I think we came back on a Friday. That video's out there as well. And then the following week sometime, I ate some humble pie and apologized to everyone for being a jerk. So, I mean, I wasn't a big jerk, but still, I could have handled it better. But I apologized for not handling it better. Let's see. I think he says a few ideas about the poem and its hunt, but as I live on the other side of the planet, I will never get the opportunity to hunt for it myself. I have some thoughts about the where warm waters halt. Well, don't we all? Listen, what's his name? Gary. Trust me, we all go through this, especially when we first discover this treasure. We all have ideas, and then invariably you'll hear the story, everyone's story of their first recon, which is based on reading the book, coming to the conclusion they know specifically where the treasure is, and they go there and realize two things. Number one, this is a much bigger problem than I imagined, and number two, I don't know what the hell he's talking about, meaning Fenn. And if you want to see my version of that story, you can go to our blog and look up the Rio Chama recon, which was my first recon where I tried to drown my son. Not intentionally, but... let's see. Thrill of the Chase, Colorado. Totally agree with the poem. Relates to trout fishing. See, we agree on something. And then I have an unusual thoughts about the home of Brown, but alas. The alas being a reference to the fact that he lives in Australia. Thanks for taking the time to read this, etc., etc. Yours sincerely, Gary, Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. So that was very nice. On the other side of the planet, as he says, in the Pacific. I've been there. I've been to Sydney, Australia. Okay, so let's read some text messages that came in. Again, if you have questions, 866-597-9901. That is a toll-free number. And call. You can text there. We accept text messages. And for the moment, you can call and leave a voicemail, and we can play the voicemail. And then after I'm done with all this, we'll open up the phone lines, and you can call in and we can chat. Okay. Oh, so this is a voicemail. So let's see.
Oh, no need to answer. I just thought I'd give a clue. I think you've missed a lot of stuff. I'll just give you one to look for. You see the three B's? They connect. All maps have a vector. You put the vector over the right.
Go. He didn't finish his voicemail message. So he said the three B's connect. They have a vector, which is the intersection of the three B's, where the three B's connect. So sorry he didn't finish that. Very interesting voice, though. He sounds very studious, doesn't he? Okay, and this one is from his name is Larry from Texas. Did I read this last week? So he says, hi, Toby. I've done a lot of listening to you guys and just wanting to know, how do you know what land is okay to look on without being a trespasser? In the case of Fenn's treasure, there's two categories of property on which you have the potential to trespass. One is private land, that is, it is owned by somebody and not the public, such as BLM land, which is owned by the public. And the other is land owned by one of the Native American tribes, because basically you're invading another nation at that point, and they have very strict rules against that. Now, if you need to know all of that, the BLM provides maps. You can buy maps from the BLM office, and the BLM office has the BLM has offices in, I don't want to say in major cities, because I think there's a BLM office in Lander, Wyoming, but you can go there and they have maps that make the distinction on the maps, and they're very detailed. They make a distinction on the maps by color of which property is the responsibility of which authority. So private land is always on white, in white. State land is blue. National park land and national forest land is green, and Native American land is kind of orange, and then BLM land is yellow. So that's consistent from BLM map to BLM map. And they have two kinds of maps. They have the state-sized map, which gives you a nice overview, and then they have the states are divided into quadrants, and then they have those are named maps, and they have those as well. And if you go into any BLM office, you can get those maps, and you can tell by GPS coordinates exactly what kind of land you're on at any given point in time. So, and again, the only lands on which you have the potential to trespass is non-public land, and the two categories of non-public land that fit into the search area are private property, private land, or native property that's land that are owned by any one of the Native American tribes in the 4 treasure states. Okay, so Larry from Texas, that's pretty cool. Okay, this is from Michael in area code 719. Hey, Toby, has anyone discussed recently the treasure is, quote, the treasure is wet, unquote? I think that's one of those topics that has been discussed ad infinitum. So there is always a lot of discussion in that. It was a question that came up. I think it was one of Jenny Kyle's questions, or someone asked the question. Jenny Kyle passed it on to Fenn, and then Fenn, Jenny published the answer, and he uses the word physics in his response, and the implication of that word is that when he describes the treasure as being wet, it is associated with physics, and the only physics that would apply in this case is condensation, based on heating and cooling in an area where there is a high density of water in the air. And for the most part, during the summer months, if it's not a dry season, but even during the wet season, there's still dew in the morning. So I think because of where the treasure is hidden, that it's in an area that has high levels of condensation, and so the heating cooling process of that big bronze 42 pounds worth of metal would cause it to be wet. And if it doesn't get any sunlight in the location where it's hidden, that moisture, that wetness, if you will, can stay longer than just the morning dew. So I think that's what he was referring to, my opinion. Let's see. Here's a message from D. You have said it is not in the best interest of the legend of Fenn for the treasure to be found. Do you think Fenn has always thought that way? If not, why did he change his thinking? Well, the answer is I don't know. As a matter of fact, I made him angry over this topic because I said in a show a long time ago that Fenn wanted this treasure on to last 100 years or last 1,000 years. And I used some examples. And if you look at the examples, he's never said he wants it to last 1,000 years. He always uses a sidereal. He always says something like, yeah, it could last 1,000 years. It could last. He's never indicated a desire for it to be that way. He's indicated the possibility that it could. And when I say it is in his best interest, the moment that treasure is recovered, the story of Forrest Fenn takes a downward vector, right? So the story of Fenn continues to rise. We started down here with 1,000 searchers. It continued to increase. We claim there's 350,000 searchers. Kpro finds it, and then the interest in Fenn goes down, and the interest in Kpro and what she's doing with all that money goes up. Fenn's story starts diminishing until it is told a lot less often. But there's not once the treasure is found, there's not 350,000 people looking for the treasure. There's 350,000 people looking for Kpro. I'm just kidding. Let's hope that doesn't happen. So Fenn has never said it is either his expectation or desire that it would last 100 or 1,000 years. He's always said it in a way that it was a possibility, not a desire. But again, that's the longer the treasure remains unrecovered, the longer and I'm hesitant to use the word legend because it's not a legend. It's there. We know it. We have the book. We have faith that it's there. But it's not a legend. It's not like the Lost Dutchman mine, of which there is very little evidence that it ever existed. There are stories. There's a legend associated with the Lost Dutchman mine in the Superstition Mountains in Arizona. But this is not a legend. This exists. Now, over time, as Fenn passes away and the story of the treasure is in variable mode, it could then become a legend, but there's enough evidence out there, including the books and everything that's been captured on the internet, et cetera, you could be in 100 years and you started doing research in this period, assuming we haven't blown ourselves to bits or haven't been struck by an asteroid, and it wouldn't be a legend. You would have so much data from the various sources, including stories and 2020 videos, that it isn't a legend. You could say the treasure exists, but it's never been found. So there's no legend associated with it. Maybe in 1,000 years there might be a legend about, there was this grand treasure, and then this lady from South Carolina or North Carolina found it, and then she lived happily ever after. She moved to Las Vegas and lived happily ever after. So that might have by that time turned into a legend, but there is no legend. There is the reality of he hid a treasure, and one of us is going to find it one day. Not one of us. One of you is going to find it one day. Okay, this Jeremiah, great name. Jeremiah was a bullfrog. Pompano Beach, Florida. Would it be useful to create an interactive map for the forest community to mark where they have not found the treasure? I feel like we could collect pinpoints, thousands of places to within 500 feet that the treasure has not been found. If we are a family, let's find this treasure. I hadn't read this message, but somewhere during the week, I had a thought that if you could build an online application that basically had a database where people could say, I searched in this area and it wasn't there. So here's who would be really good. Jeremy Parnell. Because I think he's got all the skills that would enable this to happen. So you'd build an app which people could sign on, ideally a phone-based app, a smartphone-based app, so you could do it instantly, that you could enter the location in which you had not where you had searched, but the treasure wasn't there, and you could start building a database of where the treasure isn't, effectively reducing the size of the search area. I think this is a really good idea. Now, I'm 70. I don't feel like developing applications at this point, but whoever of you is not 70 and would like to develop a smartphone-based application to do just that, I think it'd be a heck of an idea. And it's not like you're sharing anything. I wanted to get, I actually wanted to get into this topic. This is why I was thinking about this topic. So I got an email from a gentleman. I'm assuming he's a gentleman. He read like he was a gentleman, who wanted to share his absolutely conclusive solution that he knew where the treasure was. And I said to him, actually it was a comment in one of the videos, and I said to him, how is it that he wanted for us to review his solution and be impressed with how either right or wrong with it was. And I wrote back to him and I said, if we don't know the location, if we, meaning the person you've asked to do this, doesn't know the location of the treasure, how are we going to tell you whether your solution is right or wrong? I mean, the logic isn't, nobody can do that. So you could put your solution in this chat room and ask people to tell you whether they're right or wrong, and they don't know because A, they have their own solution, and B, they don't know where the treasure is, so they can't tell you. So they have to assume that your solution is incorrect. And I remember Fenn saying something about this, and I don't remember his exact words, so I'm always hesitant to attempt to quote him, much less paraphrase him. But here's what I was thinking. There are no solutions. There is only one correct solution, and that solution is only correct after the person who implements that solution recovers and returns with the treasure. Up until that time, they are all theories. What we're presenting is theories about the possibility, no matter how many clues you think you've solved. If you think you've solved all 9 clues, unless you have the treasure in your hands, you don't have a solution, you have a theory that eventually you're going to have to go out and test, because that's how theories work. They remain theories until look up Einstein's theory of the existence of black holes. And the way he wanted to prove that black holes existed was he believed that in certain situations black holes would actually cause light to bend. But in order to prove that, he had to have an eclipse. He had to have a person on the part of the Earth at which that eclipse could be seen, and they had to do it with a bunch of equipment. And so every X number, I don't know how many days there are between eclipses of the sun, he would find a way to contract with scientists, other astronomers, who would go off into these places where eclipses would take place, so that they could do the data collection, because that's effectively what it was, to prove that light would bend around an invisible object in space. And eventually they did. So at that point, it was no longer a theory. They had evidence. And so it became a fact. Black holes are so the gravitational pull of a black hole, which is an object you cannot see in space, is so great that it actually bends light photons. There is evidence of that. So Einstein's theory, at the point at which the evidence was provided, was now fact, accepted fact. And that's how theories work. Until you have the treasure, up until that point, that's accepted fact. Up until that time, it's theory. And who was it? Was it Thomas Edison? Somebody questioned. He was working towards inventing the filament light bulb, and he had 2,000 failures. And somebody questioned. You've failed 2,000 times to invent a light bulb, a filament-based light bulb, and Edison said, "No. I've got 2,000 ways not to do it," and that's what we have. We have a theory, and every one of us that has gone out on a recon, one or more recon in a lot of our cases, our theory was proved invalid. Because there is only one valid theory, and it is only proven, it becomes fact when the treasure is recovered. Up until then, it's all theoretical. So what prompted my thinking on this was this question about, wouldn't it be cool if we established a database where we could all input our theories in the form of geographic coordinates? I haven't thought this through, but wouldn't it be cool if we had an app, phone-based app, where we could put in the geographic coordinates where we disproved our theory? Because you're not giving anything away at that point. You don't have the treasure. Your theory is disproven, and now you have to go and you have to concoct a new theory, which is what we're all doing, right? So it was interesting to get this guy, because I've thought about this, and I think it would be a hell of an idea if we all just put, look, I've looked I've looked in 5 places. We have looked in 5 places on the Rio de los Pinos, and I can tell you precisely the geographic coordinates of each of those locations, and I can say, didn't find it there. That theory is no longer valid. So there's no such, we don't have solutions. So I'm sure this is going to start some, there is no such thing as a solution in this game. They're all theories. There is only one solution, and that theory that becomes that solution only becomes viable at the moment that theory results in the collection of that treasure. Spoken by Toby. Okay, that should give us a lot to talk about. Back to our questions. I've watched, hello Toby, I don't know who this is from. So, it's Russ, Spirit Hunter. Hello, Toby. I'm watching the program right now. My name is Russ, a.k.a. Spirit Hunter. I'm a retired U.S. Army Ranger. I'm not a retired Ranger. I was a Ranger. Living in Wisconsin, I'm looking to move to New Mexico for a big, I'm going to say, adventure. Any suggestions? Was supposed to say new adventure, not New Mexico. Oh, okay. I'm planning to move to new adventure. I'm very new to the Fenn deal. However, I am very intrigued. In the military, I would spend 2 months out of the year in Las Cruces training on BLM land with the BLM and DEA, Bureau of Land Management and the Drug Enforcement Administration. So if I was living in, there's so many things to do. Wisconsin's a beautiful state. You've got the Great Lakes nearby. I kind of feel like I've always wanted to live in that area up there around the Great Lakes because there's great boating, great fishing, great camping. There's trees. So if there is an adventure in New Mexico, it is I think there are basically 2 areas that I would take an interest in if I was coming to New Mexico. One is the Fenn treasure, because you could live in Santa Fe, which is basically the focal point of this thing. And then during the spring to fall, you could spend time hunting for the treasure and trout fishing and doing a lot of other things up north. The other area that's always interested me is the Native American, the anthropology and archaeology of the Native American. Now, you can't practice technically unless you're a educator, unless you're certified to be an archaeologist and start digging up these things. You can't actually practice archaeology. You can look for arrowheads, is the closest you could come to the archaeology. But there's a lot of anthropology to be studied. I mean, if you go to Chaco Canyon, you could spend years analyzing Chaco Canyon if you had such an interest, because if you look at it, it's one of those places that doesn't make any damn sense whatsoever. It's like you ask why here, why this place, why the stones, why the round buildings, why the effort of moving rocks tens, if not in some cases hundreds of miles to get them, So I think that in and of itself, and I know Wisconsin has their own tribes, Native American and anthropological studies that they do on the Native American, but it's very different. It's very different here. Northern New Mexico is far more interesting to me than the rest of New Mexico, but there's lots of metal detecting to be done on BLM land. So if you're coming to New Mexico for the Fenn treasure, I don't know that's enough. I don't know if that's enough, as far as I'm concerned. But that's because I've always wanted to live in the area that you're living in. Okay, let's see. This is from James in Texas. Could he provide more clues? Yes, he could, but then that would spoil everything. So I don't think we're going to get any more clues from Fenn. I don't think of myself as what is referred to as a poem purist, but I think all the clues are in the poem, and that's all we're going to get. Fenn has done a lot of talking, a lot of writing, a lot of production, if you will, ever since he published the book, but I don't think there's anything in there. As a matter of fact, James, every February 4th, our Jenny Kyle, who owns the Mysterious Writings website, prior to January or February 4th, she submits what she calls 6 questions to Forrest Fenn. Now, if you analyze them, I think in the last one there were actually 20. This 6 actually contained 22 questions. And then Fenn does his best to answer them in a way that stimulates activity in the search but doesn't really give you anything. So that happens again February 4th. Now, there are some people that believe that there are searchers that are close and that Fenn is aware. I don't think any of that's true. I think Fenn knows that nobody is close, and, certainly not within 12 feet or 5 feet or whatever that theory is right now. But February 4th, Jenny will release that, and you can see Fenn's answers to, quote, the 6 questions, how many ever number she asks this year of Fenn. And you will discover that he does a really good job of being distractive. I mean, he doesn't give you anything that's going to help you. Closest I've ever felt like he gave us something that helped is when somebody asked him about the little girl in India, and he said that she couldn't get past the first 2 clues. I thought that was probably as helpful as anything we're going to get from him after after what's in the book. Let's see. So I was having trouble reading this. So this is, okay, so whoever this is from, this is area code 301, which is Maryland. Are the trails in the P.O., it's like post office with periods, P.O. Aggie Falls area in Wyoming heavily searched? So first of all, that's pronounced Poposia. That's how it's pronounced. I know Fenn says Popo, and in the few times where I've heard him say it, I'm sure by now he knows it's the Poposia. But the Popo Aggie Falls area, there's 3 rivers that go through that area in Lander, Wyoming. One of them goes right down the middle of the Sinks Canyon, and that's the Middle Poposia River. And that area, I think, is pretty well searched. But once you're going to get up there, you're going to realize you're going to have a hard time making any of the clues fit. It's a beautiful area, and he talks about it in one of the chapters of Too Far to Walk. He tells the story of how he flew in that direction when he was heading, or he stopped in Lander one of the times he was up in Cody, Wyoming. We actually did, that's how we ended up in Lander. We went to find out. And although it's a beautiful area, the Sinks Canyon is just beautiful, you have a hard time making the clues fit. It's hard to make it work. But I strongly recommend that if you ever find yourself in the Lander, Wyoming area, that you make it a point to visit Sinks Canyon. Go by their visitor center. They had a bunch of rangers there, young rangers that were very helpful. And look at the Sinks Canyon. The reason they call it the Sinks Canyon is just below the ranger station. The water from the Middle Poposia goes down into the ground, and it appears a quarter mile later. And what's interesting about it, they've done studies, is that it's in that inside the earth for far longer than it should have been to get a quarter mile. They'd put dye in the water to see how long it takes the dye to come out the other end. And so the sinks is where the water goes down underground, and the rise is where it comes back up. And it takes longer than it should for that water to go, disappear from the sinks and come back up in the rise. That's the first thing. And the other thing, too, is when it comes back from the rise, because it's been underground, it's a couple of degrees. I don't want to say a couple of degrees. I'm not sure. It is warmer at the rise than when it goes underground at the sinks. Warm waters. That was how we worked it out. But it is a beautiful area, and if you ever get there, plus they have you can rent the Park Service. It's a state park. Sinks Canyon is a state park, not a national park. But they've put up these yurts there that you can rent in the various campgrounds, and they're really cool. If you ever get a chance, they're not very expensive. They're like $45 a night, and you can rent a yurt, and it has a little portal and a place to cook, and it's really kind of nifty. So yeah, do a yurt at Sinks Canyon. Poposia, it's pronounced Poposia. And the reason when we got there, we said Popo Aggie, and people corrected us right away. Toby, this refers to when I met you at the bookstore. I was just wondering if you ever followed up on some of the hidden clues I shared with you and the thrill of the chase. I would love to talk with you off air, but seems our schedules don't allow to meet up. And that's Jason from Iowa. Jason, we did talk about him, and I remember that it was not in our area. So what? Since we're not looking, but if we did look, we would look no further than the northern part of New Mexico. It's hard for me to take somebody else's theory and have a conversation about them, because whenever you're doing that, whenever one of us is doing that to another of us, you're asking us to validate your theory when in reality we have our own theory, and neither one of us is right because neither one of us has the treasure. So, but I remember it being a damned interesting conversation. This is from our friend Paul Ammons. Do you think Fenn put the title to the rights to the treasure in the chest? No. I think the title to the rights to the treasure is in the poem. Toby, glad you're back. True or false? Fenn will have to die for the chase to become solvable. Thinking of his epitaph. No. Oh, true or false? False. I do not believe Fenn's longevity, either living or dead, has any effect on whether the solution to the poem, to the theory, can become implemented. I don't think it has anything to do with his death. Let's see. Toby, did Mr. Fenn, this is from area code 805. 805, send me your name so I know who I'm talking to. Toby, did Mr. Fenn have the poem completed in 1988, minus one line about the bones? Also, what do you think Mr. Fenn is going to do this time when he dies? Something. He's going to go to the chest. No, I don't think the poem was completed until much later. I don't think that was the plan in 1988. I don't think he had a plan. I think his plan in 1988 was to go to the mountain, go to the, quote, special place, unquote, lay down next to the treasure, take some pills, and die. I don't think he had thought about, I think that storyline, if you will, about writing a poem, publishing a book, hiding a treasure. I think that all came later through the 1990s, where he was looking for someone to write his memoir with it for him, and then into the early 2000s as he got the idea for translating the physical representation of where he hid the treasure and the things that you need to know about it into the clues that ended up in the poem. So no, I don't think it was in 1988, and I do not believe he'll go back to the treasure before he dies. I think he's said on several occasions that he's past the stage where he'd have to go alone, and I'm 70, and if I'm going to the Rio de los Pinos, honestly, I want somebody with me, because there's a lot of bad things that could happen in the Rio de los Pinos area. It's rocky. I'm constantly stumbling on things. It's because of my glasses. When I don't know, for those of you who are bifocal, or in my case trifocal users, wearing glasses while you're hiking because you're looking down and you're having to look through the lowest level, it is really it has the effect. I always carry a walking stick because Shelley will tell you I have fallen more than once while we were hiking that area. Well, if you're up there alone and you're in one of these secluded areas where apparently his special place is, and something happens to you, you could be in big trouble because there's not any help coming. There's nobody else up there. So I think he's at the stage because he's 88 and he's missing a kidney, and he'd have to go alone, and he would be secluded if he were to stumble and do it in this area. He could end up, not, because it has to be a secret. He's got to keep it a secret. So I don't imagine he'll ever get back to that treasure before he passes. Let's see, 262, who is that from? Hang on. Name is, Spirit Hunter in the military. Okay, yes, that's exactly what I'm thinking. Thank you for your input. Okay, yeah, Wisconsin is beautiful. I wouldn't If I lived in Wisconsin near that area up there with all those trees and all that water, I'm not sure I could leave Wisconsin. Although your politics up there is kind of screwy, so maybe for that reason. Okay, this is from 303, Colorado area code. Let's see if they give us a name. More on types of land. What type of land would allow a searcher to keep the treasure? For example, if found on private property, it would obviously belong to the landowner. That is true of the tribal property. State parks, he asks. State parks check beforehand because almost every state park I've been in, New Mexico and Colorado and Wyoming, have different rules. Some of them have the same rules as the National Park Service, but some of them have rules that say if you try to take it out, you're not only going to get fined and maybe put in jail. Ask our friends Scott Conway, who was digging in a state park and was arrested and fined. So so every state park is different. I wouldn't be digging in a state park. I wouldn't remove anything from a state park without letting rangers know. But before letting the rangers know, I would let my attorney know. But again, if you're at a stage where you're having to inform officials and talk to attorneys about you having recovered the treasure, I don't think that was Fenn's intent. I think Fenn wanted to make it as easy to own as possible. So what you're reduced to at that point, if you can't take it off private land because it belongs to the property owner, you can't take it off tribal land because not only does it belong to the tribe, but you're going to get thrown in jail because they don't mess around with that stuff. State parks and national parks. National parks are interesting because you do have to inform. I guess if you could sneak it out of the national park, you could be okay, but eventually you'd have to explain to somebody where you found it. But the safest areas are BLM land because that is truly the people's land, and there's no, as long as you don't dig it up, as long as you can, on BLM land, you can dig 6 to 12 inches without them getting crazy about it. But after 12 inches, then you get into their archaeology rules. So if it's hidden on BLM land, you're going to be okay with it. And if it's hidden on national forest land, you're going to have a lot less problem. National park land, you may eventually get it back, but you're going to have to fight for it. And it's going to have to be after Fenn is dead because Fenn still has a right to ownership if it's on national park land. So my expectation is that it's on either BLM or national forest land. Private property, it would be, let's see, state parks, national parks, forests. What about BLM? Could that help reduce the search area? It does, but even if you were reduce it to BLM and national forest land, you're still dealing with hundreds of thousands of square miles of area in the in the search area states. Could that reduce? I've heard the story of the Forrest wife. Peggy didn't realize he was even gone until he had come back from hiding the treasure. Is this true? What is the source? I don't know what the source is. I've never researched that particular comment. I think he said it once, and it might have been like Moby Dickens in the Moby Dickens video. I'm sure one of our folks in the room could tell. When did Fenn tell the story about Fenn, that Peggy didn't know he was gone the day he hid the treasure until he had gotten back? And then, of course, there wasn't a conversation between the two of them about, hey, I was out, where have you been? Oh, I went to hide my treasure. That didn't happen. It was just the kind of thing where she said, well, look at you, Mr. Fancy Pants. Where have you been all day? And he would have said, oh, just that and about. I'm back. Let's have dinner. Change the subject real quick. So this question is from Ralph. I like your ideas on what you would do if you found the treasure. Do you have a plan to provide security while driving to Sotheby's with the treasure? Yes, it's a 9mm pistol. No, at some point you have to protect it, but you would be far wiser to hire one of the security companies to transport, the transportation security companies to transport it for you. You don't want to be driving across the state with the treasure in the back because all of anything could happen. You could be in an accident, you could be stopped for dope or whatever. The last thing you want to give it to, you want to put it in what do they call it? Not indescribable box. In a box that isn't recognizable. It's just a weight at that point, and you want to provide it to one of the companies, security transport companies, because as long they'll ask you if it's the equivalent of explosives or illegal, neither of which is true. They'll ship it for you exactly where you want it to go. I wouldn't do it myself. Doesn't make sense. I would drive in that direction, but. From Paul Ammons again. Do you think Fenn put the title to the rights? Oh, that was his other question. Oh, no, Toby. The rights to the thrill of the chase, the trademark, so the person that finds the chest can carry on. It makes sense to me. If not, where do you think those rights will go? I'm not sure what you're asking, Paul. So he has said he has responded to a question about, he once responded to a question about his biography that's included in the olive jar in the chest, and says it is copyrighted and he and his heirs maintain the copyright. I think the only evidence that you would require that you would own the chest is the last few lines. We have often said, and we have YouTube videos about the fact that the first, fifth, and sixth stanza are about ownership, how he owned it and how he transfers, in the words, I give you title to the gold, how he transfers title. And a credible argument could be made in court, if it was ever questioned, that if the treasure was in your possession, you have title to that treasure. Now, whether or not you could go on with the thrill of the chase is a completely different question, but I'm sure that because the thrill of the chase, you can't copyright the phrase, the thrill of the chase, because it's been used more. Just Google the thrill of the chase and you'll see that there are a number of books, and I think there's even a movie out there with that name. So you can't copyright a name like that. You're basically copyrighting the idea. So if you were to try and take the thrill of the chase, rehide the treasure, call it the thrill of the chase, I think you'd run into copyright or if not copyright, at least trademark infringement issues. And I don't know why. I don't know why you would do that. I don't know what it gets you to do that, except more calls from attorneys who aren't yours, So I guess I don't know what the purpose is. I don't know why you do that. I think if you find the treasure, there's a lot of other things to do with it than start, figuring out whether or not you have rights to, quote, the thrill of the chase, unquote. I think that would be a wasted effort. Hey, Toby, love the content. Christian from San Diego. Christian, I love San Diego. I think San Diego, I used to sail out of there every time I got in that direction. By the way, Christian, this around my birthday actually is the 50th anniversary of the Santa Barbara oil spill, which we did a documentary on. Look it up, Stories of the Spill. It was one of the first documentaries I worked on when I returned to New Mexico and I wasn't doing work for the government anymore. But this is the 50th anniversary of that spill. And what was interesting about that spill, because Californians raised a ruckus about it, it was actually thought of as the starting point of the ecology movement in the United States, because up until that time we just didn't pay attention, and then suddenly these people, one of the oil companies blows one of their oil rigs out in the Santa Barbara Channel, and it ends up in Santa Barbara. And I don't know if you guys have ever been to Santa Barbara, but it's one of those quintessentially perfect California beach towns, except it's got a lot of money. And so when oil started filling up their marina and their white, sand beaches, it turned into a movement. And as a matter of fact, what's interesting is Richard Nixon was president at the time. And one of the things that Richard Nixon is known for is establishing a lot of initiatives that ended up in regulations for environmental protection, including the law that established the Environmental Protection Agency. And you wouldn't think that a Republican like Richard Nixon would even think about that, but he was very active when it came to the environment. Of course, he was a Californian, so maybe that was a bit of it. But there's a great story in there, Stories of the Spill. Look it up. It's about, I don't know, half hour long. And then we did another film. This is my friend Janet Bridgers, who's the president of Earth Alert. Then we did a second documentary called Heroes of the Coast, where all these people who had been active during that time to get all these things changed, what it ended up, as you'll see in the story, is all that activity ended up in something called Proposition 20 in California, which is the California established the California Coastal Commission, which basically protects the coast and establishes the fact that nobody can own the coast. There was only one place called Sea Ranch. It was up north that actually could own the coast, but nobody can own the coast in California. Your property has to be back from the beach line, the water line. So take a look at it. It was a fun video to produce because I'm not a Californian, and I learned a lot about coastal protection. And my point was, I like San Diego a lot. Okay, this is Jeremiah again from Pompano Beach, Florida. I don't have the reference, but I watched a video of Fenn saying that he parked his car in a parking lot. Fenn has never said he parked his car in a parking lot. You will not find that reference. Do you know if this was paved or an actual marked out parking lot? This would also narrow the search a lot. Yes, it would if that was true. I don't have any evidence that he ever said he parked in a parking lot. When he was hiding the treasure, he may have parked in the parking lot to go get a beer. But there is no, just go to Terry Scant and look it up. That doesn't exist. Let's see, back from Colorado. Did we get a name from Colorado? Colorado, did you give us your name? True. What's the source? Oh, Pata33. Thanks, Toby. A question about mapping software. GMAP4 no longer exists. That's true. I was very saddened to hear. As a matter of fact, I did a blog post that I had actually done a video on how to use GMAP4, but he couldn't fund it any longer. I went to Onyx Maps. It's you have to pay for it, $79 a year. But I went to Onyx Maps, and between Google Earth and Onyx Maps, I have all the information I need. Plus, as you can see behind me, I use a lot of the BLM maps. The BLM maps have always been the most helpful. And then we use the drone to basically map the area that we're in terms of imagery. So we have all those sources for us. So, okay. So, that's all right. So let me go back real quick. So if anybody wants to call in, I'm going to turn on the call-in line now. You can call in. We can chat-a-rama here. Okay. So you can call now. And when I answer, we'll be able to talk. Okay. So I'm going to go back. Well, moderation required. Well done. Softer side. Hey, she's a softer side. Don't underestimate her. She's thanks, Toby. I'll check it out. Oh, that's from our friend Christian in San Diego. Check it out. He lived in Santa Barbara 2 years. You know, Santa Barbara, like our friend from Wisconsin who lives in Wisconsin to New Mexico. Santa Barbara, although I'm talking about this on the evening that I'm mentioned that I'm buying a house in New Mexico. Santa Barbara is one of those places where if I wanted to live on the coast, if I could live on the coast, it would be Santa Barbara that I'd live, because it literally is the perfect coastal example of a coastal city. Expensive. But one of the interesting people we interviewed was a gentleman whose name is Bud Bottoms. And the reason he was really active when the oil spill occurred, he formed a group called GOO, Get Oil Out, and they used to get on their sailboats and they'd sail out to the rigs and hold up big signs that said GOO, Get Oil Out. Anyway, he was one of the interviews. If you ever go to Santa Barbara and you go to the marina area, there's restaurants, there's a big marina, they have a big, beautiful marina, and it's wonderful to sail out of there. Because you're sailing in the Santa Barbara Channel, so the winds are very predictable. They're either going north or south. And, of course, you can go out to the Channel Islands. But Bud Bottoms was an artist. He was a bronze, he cast bronze, and he was really famous for these beautiful bronzes. But if you ever go to Santa Barbara and you go down to the marina, there's this bronze. It's got to be, I don't know, close to 20 feet tall, and it's a series of porpoises jumping, and it's a fountain. That was a Bud Bottoms piece. What I didn't know until we actually interviewed him. I thought we were interviewing an activist and an artist. And it turns out that Bud Bottoms has 3 sons. Timothy Bottoms, I don't know the 3 sons, but they're all actors. So Timothy Bottoms is probably the most well-known of them, but there were 3 Bottoms brothers that were actors. Turns out Bud was their dad. So, and I didn't know that until we did the interview. But if you're ever on the California coast, get to Santa Barbara. Beautiful. The restaurant, the food is great. The hotels are great. Every hotel has a great view of the Channel Islands and oil rigs. I still have. Janet came over the other day. My friend Janet, who's again the president of Earth Alert, and she wanted to borrow all the raw footage from our effort because she's using the 50th anniversary as a way to make people aware. She's going to, put it in the media, and we were going through all this video that I shot when we were out there, and there's this one video from up on the hill above Santa Barbara, and basically it's a pan of the Santa Barbara Channel with the Channel Islands in the background, and it's just loaded. They're still there. The oil rigs are still there in the channel. Now, they haven't had a failure since then, but all it would take is one little tiny California earthquake to change all of that. So, Smart Line is open. You want to call and talk. You can probably keep me on track with Fenn, and I won't talk about moving, and I won't talk about the Viral. Did you guys look up Viral? W-I-R-A-L. Viral. Huh? How cool is that? I'm going to play with it this weekend. So, because I get to play with it, because I'm retired. When you're retired, you get to do stuff, that you always wanted to do. So, let me go back. Oh, there's a lot of chat going on that I didn't track. Let's see what we got here. So, K-Pro, call me and bring me up to date on your life. What's going on there? Let's see. So I got an interesting mail. So one of the people, I hope, Steve, so if you're watching this, there was a gentleman whose name is Steve Klein, who has kind of a obtuse sense of the world. And when I first started making this channel, he was just a pain in the ass, so I blocked him. A week ago, he sent me an email, and he said that he was sharing this email with other people. So let me read it to you. You guys might find it interesting. Let me see if I even saved it. So it was an email containing a communication between he and another man. Let's see if I've got it. I even wrote the last message, the last email I wrote to him was, this is Toby Eunice. Did you intend to send this to me, or was this an accident on your part? Because I figured Steve Klein doesn't particularly like me. And when I asked him that. Okay, so this is an email exchange between Steve Klein and a gentleman whose name is Kenneth Barnett Tankersley, Ph.D., Associate Professor, Department of Anthropology, Department of Geology, Curator, Court Archaeological Research Facility, 481 Brownstein Hall, University of Cincinnati, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45221. And he has a link there. So Steve wrote that gentleman an email. And Steve says, first off, I really enjoyed the book you wrote on Sitting Bull's Peace Pipe. Who knew? Great job. In your honest opinion, do you think Fenn hid a trove in the Rockies? So Steve asked this gentleman. Now, I had not heard this gentleman's name. I'm assuming that because he wrote a paper on Sitting Bull's Peace Pipe, that he might have come into contact with Forrest Fenn, because Forrest has always shown the picture of the pipe that I don't know if he actually claims it's Sitting Bull's. I think the claim that he makes is that it matches the pipe that Sitting Bull is holding in one of the formal photographs that he's taken. So Steve asks him, first off, I really enjoyed the book you wrote on Sitting Bull's Peace Pipe. You guys might look that up. I didn't know there was a book on Sitting Bull's Peace Pipe. Great job. In your honest opinion, do you think Fenn hid a trove in the Rockies? So Kenneth Barnett Tankersley, hang on. Let's read that. Let's turn that down just a tad. Oops. So somebody called and hung up. Tankersley responds, thank you, Steve. I have seen the chest firsthand and filled. I do not believe that Forrest ever said or wrote that it was hidden in the Rockies. Holiday cheers. So Fenn has this funny way of saying that. He has said, after 2013, he has said on more one occasion that you look in the rock. He has a kind of funny way to say it. I don't know if he's ever actually said that he hid a treasure in the Rocky Mountains. What he wrote in the book was that he hid a treasure somewhere in the mountains north of Santa Fe. The Rockies were not mentioned. There's a video, look it up, because we covered this territory. The video is entitled Forrest Fenn Didn't Discover the Rockies Forrest Fenn Discovered the Rockies in 2013, because that's when the Rockies started coming up, and he would show the map. That's when the Too Far to Walk was published, and he'd show the map, and he'd say, if you can find this, if you're looking for the treasure, you can find it on this map. And of course, the assumption was that it was in the Rocky Mountains, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know, I think recently he's actually said things that use the word Rockies in the sentence. So I'm not sure that Kenneth Tankersley is up to date on that. So Tankersley says, thank you, Steve. I have seen the chest firsthand and filled. I do not believe that Forrest ever said or wrote that it was hidden in the Rockies. Yeah, I don't think he's written that. I think he has implied that in some of his recent statements, certainly after 2013. Then Steve writes back, man, that's awesome. You got to see the chest and contents before he hid it. You and Fenn are like the real-life Indiana Jones. I'd figure you or Doug Preston would have found it by now, but I know you guys are busy. Happy holidays to you and yours. And Steve, Dr. Tankersley writes back, is that Tankersley? Yeah, Tankersley writes back. Hi, Steve. Neither of us are interested. I guess neither being he and Doug Preston. We both know that the book leads to a buried jar with a clue, which leads to another buried jar with another clue, and so on. Besides, the real treasure in the book is Forrest and his family. And Steve writes back, don't watch AGK. No, he doesn't write that. So Steve shared that with me. I don't know if that was, I questioned whether or not that was his intent, because I don't think he's ever particularly liked my channel. But I thought he shared that with me, so I thought I'd share that with you because we share everything. So let me read that one. So, hi, Steve. Neither of us, referring to he and Douglas Preston, are interested. We both know that the book leads to a buried jar with a clue, which leads to another buried jar with another clue, and so on. Besides, the real treasure is in the book. In the book is Forrest and his family. So there you go, Dr. Tankersley. I'm assuming that Dr. Tankersley has come in contact with Fenn because he has seen the treasure, and he wrote a book about Sitting Bull's Peace Pipe. So apparently they know each other. Okay, GMAP4, how do you... so this is from our friend in Colorado, Pata33. GMAP4, how do you keep yourself organized? At this point, I have lots of ideas, questions, solves, places, quotes, and other search theories. It's hard to keep track of it. Any software or tips on keeping things straight. So so I haven't done much of that recently after we decided we weren't going to continue searching for the treasure. But if you look at our videos, the manner in which I stored all the intelligence, the information that I gathered, was in those presentations that I used. That's where it is that's where all my thinking is effectively organized. So area code 262, let's see what we got here. Hey, this is Toby Eunice. Who's this and where are you calling from? And oh, by the way, turn the audio on your computer off, otherwise we're going to get a really funny echo.
Yeah. Okay, this is, are we live right now?
We are live right now. Everybody's listening to you and me.
Yeah. Yeah, this is Russ again from Wisconsin.
Hey!
How you doing? Hey.
I'm doing great. How are you doing, fellow Ranger? Rangers all the way.
Great program.
Yeah.
Great program. I got a question for you. I found something on YouTube, and it says, I'm going to try to pull it up for you real quick.
Okay.
Here. If I can do this without disconnecting it. It says the treasure chest, Forrest Fenn retrieved the treasure chest, and this guy has forensic proof that it's the chest. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah. He was busy with that theory like a year and a half ago. He had several emails, several images, etc. There was none of it was presented as the form of evidence. It was all theoretical, and he could never validate it because there's no way to as you probably know, you can't prove a negative. So you can't prove that the chest doesn't exist, right? You can't prove it exists, but it's even harder to prove. So, yeah, he was around for a while. You will, as you, and I don't know how long you've been looking at this, but the more time you spend with it, you're going to see that there are various what I call anti-theories. And the anti-theories include things like Fenn recovered the chest, that because there's a lot of people that go with the absolute certainty that they have the correct theory and the treasure isn't there, and so the conclusion they come to is that somebody beat them to it. And in a lot of cases, they include the idea that the somebody beat them to it could have been Forrest Fenn, who retrieved the treasure, greedily keeping it for himself and leaving it so that it could never be discovered, because now if it were to be discovered in his hands or anyone else's who was close to him, it would be it would be a legend of the fraud as opposed to a legend of the treasure. So we've seen all that material. We try not we avoided when that material would pop up, I would review it, and Shelley and I made it a point not to, because we do have, we're close to 4,000 subscribers on our channel now, and so we get a lot of visibility, and what we didn't want to do is take those kinds of what I've called, as I said, anti-theories and start promoting them. So we never, while I'd look at them, analyze them, conclude how far off they were, there are folks that have, photographs from helicopters saying this is where the treasure was. There's no way to. You can't prove a negative. So we made it a point not to give that airtime, if you will, because.
Right, I get that. That makes total sense.
If you're going to look for this treasure, one of the fundamental principles of looking for this treasure is you have to have faith, right? And I'm not a religious person necessarily, but you do have to have faith that Fenn hid a treasure and that the location is accurately described in the riddles in the poem. If you don't have that faith, then don't waste your time. But the likelihood of you going specifically to that place and not finding the treasure, which I'm sure, I've been to a lot of places. I've been to 32 places looking for the treasure. I haven't found it any of those times. So the only conclusion I come to is that my theory is invalid at that point. I have yet to say to myself, damn, somebody beat me to it. I've never been so certain about my theory that I could honestly say somebody beat me to it or Fenn recovered the treasure. I take those all with a grain of salt, and I certainly didn't want to give any of them any additional airtime to promote the negative theory. Right? It just didn't make sense.
Got it.
Right? So. And honestly, I know that we're no.
I'm willing to move. I'm retired too. Like I said, I'm retired U.S. military.
Yeah.
And I got nothing but time on my hands. And then when I found out about this, which was only a couple months ago,
Right.
I told my son, I said, man, I got nothing holding me here. I think I'm going to head to New Mexico.
You know what? If that was, I was in exactly the same position. Although I didn't retire from the military, I only spent 5 years in the military. I did retire in 2010, and soon after that, discovered the existence of the treasure. I told you the story about how I was planning to retire to Costa Rica and ended up in New Mexico. Soon after I arrived here and made that decision, I discovered the treasure, and I said the same thing to myself. I'm retired. I don't have any, but my kids are on their own. They're happy. I don't have to worry about them. I can focus on this. And I found it was very much in line with my the time that I spend in the outdoors anyway, either fishing or hiking or camping. So it was all in line with that anyway. And the only unfortunate part of this story, and I laugh. I shouldn't laugh. I'm sorry. But the weekend, 3 years later, so I was here in 2010, and that's when I caused my mother's heart attack. It was 3 years later that she actually passed away, and by that time I had roots. But what was really weird is the weekend that she actually passed away, I was in the mountains looking for the treasure and didn't have access to cell phone service. So I didn't find out about her passing until I got to Espanola. And one of the things that you're going to find when you come out here is Espanola is the point at which in northern New Mexico that you have tower reception as you're heading south, further south towards Santa Fe. And so I got all these messages and voicemails of my family informing me that my mother had passed away. But I was looking for the treasure the weekend she passed away. So another reason for her probably to wait for me in heaven and meet me up when I get there, if I get there. So I made the same decision.
Maybe you can show her the treasure.
Yeah, exactly. Look what I got, Mom.
But your show is very interesting, a lot of insight. So I'm going to continue to follow you, and I got all the faith in the world.
Well, and that's what it's going to take. If you have the faith and you're willing to move out here with the idea that, you know, you've got time. You and I both know that if you have the time and you can afford to, New Mexico is relatively inexpensive. Santa Fe is a little bit more expensive than Albuquerque, and I'd recommend living in Santa Fe. That extra 60 miles between Albuquerque and Santa Fe can be an obstacle. But if you even move further north to Taos, it's even less expensive, and it's beautiful. And the people are really good. We don't have the problems in the border that everybody thinks we have. But it's a different, culture. You've got the mix of white, Native American, and Hispanic cultures here. You've got the influence of the South Americans who are here. All our food. I tease Shelley when we go out because I say there aren't any more New Mexican restaurants. They're basically Mexican restaurants, and I can tell you that because they have cilantro in the food, and New Mexican food doesn't have cilantro in it. That wasn't one of our herbs. But it's a wonderful place to live, and it's got a wonderful culture, and Albuquerque has a lot to do. And if you're interested in the culture of that era, the ancient Native American anthropological culture, it's a wonderful place to be because, there's so many places to be studied and looked at and thought about. I mean, you could spend an entire summer at either Chaco Canyon or Mesa Verde in southern Colorado, and you could write books about what you find there, even if you weren't an anthropologist, even if you just were a ex-military professional who looks at this place and goes like, you have to do it. If you're an ex-military professional, you'll do this. You go to Chaco Canyon, and what's going to happen is you're going to stand up on the side of the mesa, and you're going to look down, and you're going to ask. The questions are just going to go through your head, like why here, what was here, how did they get here, why did they stay here, why did they come here, et cetera, et cetera. So that curiosity that you will have acquired while being a military professional will serve you well when you get to New Mexico.
Yeah, that's what I find out about life. Life's all one big question, and it's the experience. Trying to find the answers.
Well, again, it sounds to me like your time in the military was well served because you have that open perspective of, like you say, life is one big question, and if all you do the rest of your life is spend trying to answer those questions, it's going to be a pretty interesting life.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, thank you for your time.
Before you leave, make sure that if you ever find yourself in Albuquerque or near Albuquerque, let me know, and we'll have some lunch or dinner or cocktails, and maybe now that I have a house, or if I have a house by then, we'll invite you over to the house and we'll play some poker or something.
Will do.
We look forward to it. My pleasure. Have a good evening. Thanks for calling.
Yes, sir.
Nice call. Nice man. Wisconsin. Good. What does Fenn say about folks like that? He used the term to describe their water runs deep, something like that. That's how the folks in Wisconsin are. I've always met good people from Wisconsin. So I got a couple of other questions while we were on that call. So that was our missed call, 720. I found all 9 clues in the poem and several in the books. I believe the treasure is under the statue buried in the Pueblo Way. Maybe it's a style. The statue is above the hills of Christ in the desert on BLM land. So go to the monastery and take the rocks off the treasure. We will split it. Say that's... It's all theoretical. No boots on the ground, but I've been to the Christ in the Monastery. Is beautiful, but it's private property in that area. It's the Christ in the Monastery and that statue are not on BLM land. They are on land owned by the monastery. But I think it's great that you found all 9 clues, because the rest of us are sitting out here going like, oh, we never found all 9 clues. So that's very fortunate. You're very fortunate to have already found all 9 clues. Okay, so that was Russ. That was the answered call. And then, let's see. Thanks, Toby. I'll check it out. I lived in Santa Barbara. Oh, this is from our friend in Santa Cruz. Is that the San Lazaro guy? No, the San Lazaro guy is the guy that wrote the Secret Kiva or the something Kivas of San Lazaro, and that's Rick. Help me out here, guys. Rick something or other. No, it's not the same guy. Rick has kind of a different reputation. He's more Indiana Jones kind of guy, actually. Okay, so we are going on our 2 hours here. Let me see if I got anybody in the room that I've missed. Let me just go back a little bit, okay? So I won't bug you out. You guys are probably having a good conversation about the crazy stuff that I was saying anyway. Davio, Bud Bottoms. Yeah, exactly. Why does he pause when he says Bud Bottoms? I don't know. Do I pause when I say Bud Bottoms? Jason Eunice is in the house. Hey, Jason Eunice, we talked today, and he was giving me advice on looking for houses. Mitzi Moore is in the house. Bud Bottoms should have been a gay bar. Oh, Mitzi, you are just funnier than the Dickens. Yeah. Okay. So there's Deep Thinkers come up. Hey, Deep Thinker. So Benjamin Bottoms, Timothy Bottoms, and is it Dusty Bottoms? Are you making that up, Pootie? Did you just make that up? But there were 3 brothers. They were all actors of various levels of renown. The most visible was Timothy, and he's got to be my age, for God's sakes. He's older than the mesquite. Let's see. No, the map shows the... Let me see. What is this? Oh, okay. The map shows the statue in the Chavez Nook. You park at the same place as the monastery. Okay. That's our friend. That's on the Rio Chama. The Monastery of Christ in the Desert is on the Rio Chama. And boy, is it an interesting drive to get there, because you have to come from the south. You can't get there from the north unless you're doing a float trip down the Chama River. So you have to get there from the south, and that road is damned interesting. It's a Pam, Ramblin' Pam kind of road, you know, those roads that she and her husband go on where you're looking straight down 1,000 feet. It's not 1,000 feet, but it's pretty damned interesting. Dave JB is in the house. T. Brown is that. Look at all the people that showed up afterwards. Deep Thinker, AJ Rainville, Mitzi Moore came in. Zozo Rocks is here. Terrible last name. Bottoms. Yeah, it is kind of a weird last name though, isn't it? But they were famous, and they're still around. Let's see. Well, so we had a couple of issues in the room, but we took care of those. Thank you. The softer side. Softer side is busy. I can tell she's busy because she's not saying anything. So she gets busy with her work on the other side of that computer. Okay, guys, I think that's it. We've gone 2 hours. I have told you personal stories. I have told you unrelated stories. People question whether or not this was a Dak. Nice to see you again. I haven't seen you in a while. Let's see. Okay, so you guys are talking in there. Thanks for joining me tonight. It was a ball. I had a great time. I got to share with you my new toy. I'm going to try that out this weekend. I will be looking for more houses this weekend that are more reasonable, not 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, 2 stories, and a 2-car garage. Although I do want the 2-car garage because it'll give me space to put my my equipment in, my shelving and my equipment. So I'll let you know how that goes. I will, depending on how this whole house buying thing goes, I may go to the event in Las Vegas, to the poker thing in Las Vegas. I haven't made any reservations yet, and I'd probably drive there. I like driving through there because I get to see a lot of cool territory. So I may go to that, but I'm not going to commit to it just yet. It really depends on, it depends how the new house purchase goes, because I'm just starting the process. You guys know how long when you're buying a house, how long it takes. It takes some time, but the pre-approvals are done, and now it's just a matter of looking and letting them go to closing. After I give it over to the realtor, then I just show up at closing. Yeah, Mitzi, I think what I'm going to do is once I've got a place and effectively the contract is signed, I'll do a live stream walkthrough of the new house. So it's going to be a lot easier than going to 2 stories. It's going to downsize. With Shelley's help, I concluded that it would be better for me to be on a single level, rather than a 2-story house. That just doesn't make sense when you're 70. I'd end up having to get one of those little chairs that go up and down the stairs, For gosh sakes. I've got a bum right leg, so. Thank you, Viet Cong. You there? Yes, 269. I am here. 417, Jason Hamilton from, I said your last name, shouldn't have done that. From Missouri, I do not think the treasure is buried because Forrest intended to die with it in his bones. To be found, he would not have been able to bury himself. You and we agree, Jason. We don't think it's buried either. Besides, buried changes the whole rules of the game. He says hidden. He has on occasion when someone else suggests that it's buried, he says, I didn't say it was buried, I said it was hidden, but that doesn't mean it isn't buried, leaving us with one of his Fennisms. So, yeah, we don't think it's buried either. We think burying it now turns a 2-dimensional problem into a 3-dimensional problem and makes it pretty much impossible at that point. And now, at the same time, you have to consider the possibility that it is placed in an area out in nature that the result of the effects of nature, environmental, ecological, geological, there is a potential that somewhere with the movement of all those factors, it may indeed, because of a byproduct of the environment, become buried. But we don't think he intentionally buried. We think it is hidden, like you. So you must be a new searcher, because that's a conversation that happens a lot. So what we have to look forward to is, so Shelley, I won't be on next Friday because Shelley and I will be on the East Coast celebrating birthday with daughters and wine country and museum and things like that. But we'll have stories to tell when we get back, I'm sure. And so I'll be back the Friday after that. And we'll do our Forrest Fenndango. We might post some stuff. You should join my Instagram. So we have 3 Instagram accounts: TM Eunice, A Gypsy's Kiss, and Shelley Carney. So if you're an Instagram user, make sure you follow us, because a lot of the stuff that we'll be doing while we're traveling will end up on Instagram, because that's how we like to communicate when we're traveling. So, I guess that's it for tonight. So, sorry that there were a couple of you that struggled with the idea that this was a Fenn treasure channel. We do eventually get to Fenn treasure stuff, but mostly it's let's get together on Friday night and make fun of each other, make fun of Mitzi channel. Okay, all right, guys. So let's get into our sign out here. Make sure the outro is plugged in. Get to the sign out. There we are. By the way, this song is entitled Pink Flamenco, and I bought it on Audio Jungle. It's a royalty-free music, so if you like it, you can buy it off Audio Jungle. It's like $20. So thanks for joining me tonight. Thanks for joining me and my partner, Miss Shelley Carney. And as I said, we won't see you next Friday, but we'll see you the Friday after that. We'll keep you up to date on what we're doing on Instagram as we're traveling to the East Coast. So I hope it was as much fun for you tonight as it was for me. I really enjoyed it. Loved seeing you guys. And we got to talk about a lot of things. So. Buenas noches.